Hello and welcome to Freed Indeed Live. I'm your host, Kevin J.N. Hughes, and I am still, at the time of recording this, I am still nursing an injury. Um, but uh, nevertheless, we press on, right? I had actually wanted to do a talk on the concept of the flood as baptism as a baptism of the earth, as we see in the first epistle of Peter. But but I realized that before I get there, there was another video that needed to come before that video. And so in Romans 8, we see something very important. Now, a lot of people have asked me about this concept as well. And this is a question that I get relatively frequently. So it's long overdue that I make a video addressing it anyway, and then combine that with the fact that I think it's an important piece to understand before we talk about the flood as baptism. We have to have a biblical understanding of how God sees and how God interacts with the cosmos or nature. So this is what St. Paul says in Romans 8. He says, "For I consider that starting in verse 18, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us." So in the resurrection, this glory is going to be revealed in us, and the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to that glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly awaits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subject to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now. Not only that, but also we have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves grown within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our bodies, for we are saved in this hope. But hope that is seen is not hope, for why does one still hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with perseverance. And then he goes on to talk more about what this looks like, the Spirit um, helping us in our weakness. But I want to focus in on verses 18 through through 24 especially. Actually through 23 especially. So Saint Paul is talking about the resurrection. He's talking about um, our redemption. He's talking about our future glorification. And in this process of talking about that, he goes in depth into this idea of um, our being revealed as the sons of God affecting the cosmic order and nature itself, the created world itself, awaiting that redemption. And focusing in, he specifically says that the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. So this goes back to Genesis 3. In Genesis 3, mankind was made, or as we recall in Genesis, as we've talked about many times, mankind was made to rule over creation. And so, as the representative of creation, we were supposed to represent God to creation and creation to God as kings and priests. But when we failed in that duty and chose instead the path of sin, mortality was the result, but not just our mortality. the very mortality of creation, death and disease and suffering in all of creation resulted from us. So animals and all of these creatures are affected by, and even plants and everything are affected by the curse that is upon the earth. But it's that subjection is not a subjection other than to hope. It's a subjection in hope. In other words, God does have a cosmic plan, as C.S. Lewis talks about. God has a cosmic plan of redemption for all creatures, for all of creation. And this is an important distinction between the way that we as Orthodox Christians look at redemption versus the way that a lot of Western traditions view creation. So, a lot of times in the West, we see this debate between whether or not there is man-caused global warming or whether we should just not really care about the environment and do whatever we want. And the Orthodox answer is neither. You don't need to appeal to some concept of global warming in order to see creation as having immense value. And even some of the proof texts that get used to argue that creation doesn't have value, such as Matthew 6, are actually, ironically, statements of creation having value. So, for example, Matthew 6, Jesus says, um, that not a single sparrow falls without the knowledge of God. And are you not more valuable than many sparrows? And I've heard many people, of different theological persuasions take that and say, well, see, the sparrows aren't very important. But the text actually says the opposite. The text says that God has great care and concern for each and every creature, for each and every plant. God has great care and concern, such that they are arrayed better than Solomon. But you have more value than they do. You and I, as human beings, as image bearers of God, have even more value than anything in the creation because we were created to rule over it. We were created to be at the top of the hierarchy. And yet, um, we have, because of us, because of our sinful choices, we have created a situation in which the earth is in bondage, but not a feudal bondage, a bondage of hope, because there is redemption for all of creation. And so, where this gets into where people typically have questions that they're approaching me about, it comes down to the idea of whether or not there will be animals in the resurrection, whether or not we'll see our pets again, all of these sorts of things. And the answer is yes. All of creation is going to, when Jesus returns, there's the resurrection of the just and the unjust, but there's also going to be a new creation of all things. And all of these creatures will be part of that resurrected life. Um, it's no accident that a common motif in scripture is the idea of the lion settling down with the lamb and the child being able to play outside of the serpent's den. The reason why these analogies are present within scripture is not because they're just nice, cute pictures. It's because God actually has a plan for all of creation, and all of creation is beautiful in God's sight. And we, as image bearers of God, we reflect God's image more fully when we care for the creatures God has made for us. The animals have been made for us, and when we care for them as creatures made for us, we reflect God's image and we reflect God's purpose for the world. Now, there's a lot more that could be said about this, but I just want you guys to see this kind of basic framework that yes, God places immense value in all of the creatures he has created. And uh, Genesis even goes as far as to describe fish as having a living soul. So God has created these creatures with a purpose, with intention, and with beauty. And God has enabled them to be part of his plan, not in the same way that human beings are, obviously, but they still have immense value in God's economy. Just not as much value as we do because we're image bearers of God. So I hope that that is helpful. I hope that that um enables you to understand a little bit better about the cosmic nature of redemption. I know that in the West, the idea of cosmic redemption and the idea of Christ's cosmic victory, these are things that might set off some alarm bells because these are concepts that have been kind of taken over by some weird folks in the West, but don't ignore the fact that there is biblical precedent for these ideas, and these ideas are essential to a full-orbed understanding of redemption. Um, so if you'd like to see more content about this, please do let me know. In the meantime, please do share this with your friends, especially your friends who rightly delight and take joy in their pets. Um, so that they too can be freed indeed and can understand the glory of God and how we glorify God in our interactions with the animals.